Hey, it's Luminostic, and today we're going to get into one of my favorite subjects, which is music. And I do truly believe, as the title of the video reflects, that this is the most important lesson that any musician can learn. So please do watch this video all the way through. Towards the end, I'm going to relate some experiences that I've had that will really help to tie everything together and drive the point that I'm making home. So please like, share, and subscribe, and let's get to it. Okay, so this is a music lesson. I'm a musician, I'm a guitarist and a singer. You'll notice that I don't have an instrument, and that is because this lesson transcends technique. It's not about scales. It's about something a little bit more metaphysical and esoteric. Over the years, I've noticed that certain musicians seem to have this really powerful energy that has a very deep impact on people. It's got nothing to do with skill level. In fact, in my own experience, there have been many times where I've been playing with somebody who technically was far more advanced, and we're trading solos, and the response that I get will just be, a lot more intense. And I think that the reason for that is this. If you are open to the possibility that you are capable of tapping in to a collective consciousness, that you can become an avatar for something higher, this at least allows the possibility for this to manifest. If you're closed off to that idea, it just won't happen. So part of my advice there is that if you're a person that is very rational, you have no sense of spirituality, I can hear that, and I think a lot of other people can too. So I would just strongly encourage, this isn't about becoming religious or, even adopting some kind of belief system. It's just about being open to the possibility that there is a spiritual reality to life in general. Another bit of evidence that I have to support this are these experiences that I've had, particularly with the Grateful Dead. That was the big one that really drove it home. But, you'll notice that people don't necessarily have to sing about the message they're conveying to the audience. In the case of the Grateful Dead, I noticed this because they had this tremendous impact on the audience. People would become kinder. They would just start focusing on the collective as if it was one big giant family. They would become less violent. This happened to me. The first show that I went to, I was not a fan of the band, didn't really understand what the whole thing was about. And once the energy hit me in the audience, I pretty much instantly understood. You could feel it. And I noticed that they had this impact on the people, but they sing about anything but the changes that you see them affecting people. And so, to summarize that, I think it's really important that, if you're beginning as a musician, or you're going out and you're playing and you're not getting that great of a response, really think about why it is that you are up there. What is it that you're conveying? At the same time, also, I think it's important not to get too fixated on whether your lyrics are communicating what it is that you're trying to get across. The important thing is that it's just in your being, because that will come across. And I'll tell you, a little bit about how I've experienced that in my own life. When I became aware of the idea of a higher intelligence, or tapping into a collective mind, which was basically the protocol with the Grateful Dead, and I understood that this had some ability to sort of induce gnosis in people, to elevate their consciousness, I decided that that's what I wanted to do with my music. So I went out to California, well, Colorado first, started a band there, and I was, wondering, could I really be capable of something like this? And after our first real show at, a nice venue, I think we played a few bars already, but I came out and people were coming down the stairs kind of hysterical. One guy came up to me with his eyes really wide and he said, "Man, I'll never see anything the same way again." And I was like, wow, that's a pretty tremendous response. So a few years later, I started another band. And I had told the guys in the band, they weren't necessarily familiar with the Dead or the whole idea of tapping into a collective mind, and the improvisations that are done are believed to happen because everyone is telepathically linked. One of the Grateful Dead lyrics is, the music plays the band. And so we had that experience, but I think the bass player in particular was still skeptical. So I go into this bar, standing by the bar, And a guy that had seen me play said, "Hey man, can I buy you a beer?" And I said, "Sure." So he buys me a beer and he's like, "I just want to tell you, you know, I came in here a couple weeks ago. I never understood the Grateful Dead, and you started playing this Grateful Dead song, and all of a sudden I realized, you know, from being in the audience and observing and listening to the way that the music was changing and the energy felt, that we had all become one mind. And I felt like you weren't just playing music. It's like you were pulling this information out of another dimension. And once that information came through, it just kind of permeated the entire audience and went directly into their beings. And of course, it was deeply satisfying for me to hear this from this guy. And so a couple weeks after that, the bass player and I are walking out, and a girl stops us and she says, "Can I tell you something that you taught me about music?" And we said, "Sure." And I really wish I could remember verbatim, because she did an amazing job, very sophisticated and detailed. You know, it went on forever. But the gist of it was this. She said, you know, when a musician has attained a certain level of consciousness, when they put their vibrations out into the room, whatever it is that they've learned, whatever it is that they know, is transmitted into the collective, and everyone receives this information, and it changes their outlook on life. And you know, it's just an extraordinary and amazing thing. And you know, it's an undeniable instance of telepathy. And so what I'm relating here, you know, is that I had these experiences, and then I set out to do this thing that seemed so preposterous. And it, again, with our music, there was nothing in the lyrics that suggested anything to do with any of this. And so to have had this subjective experience myself, set out to do it, and then have other people come up and say, "Hey, this thing happened to me," I think that that is, you know, a fair bit of proof. And you know, there have been many other times too. Once I was playing around a campfire and I finished a song, and this guy, I don't know who he was, never met him before, jumped up and he said, "This guy's not a musician, he's pulling information out of another dimension almost identical to what the other guy said." So I guess, long story short, the advice that I'm giving here is that, you know, you've got to be open to at least the possibility of these things, like a collective mind, that you could be an avatar for some kind of higher consciousness and have a purpose beyond something self-serving. You know, analyze yourself. Are you doing this just for attention? Are you, you know, do you have a deeper motivation and a deeper purpose? And if you don't, find one and then go out and play, and I can guarantee you that the response that you get from the audience will be much higher. And I think that as artists, we all have a responsibility to contribute something valuable. And I think that in our current society, you know, particularly in the United States, particularly mainstream art has become very shallow, kind of pointless, and you know, we need people with a message to go out and induce the gnosis, to help move people along spiritually, to elevate them, to lift them up. And again, you know, you don't even have to sing about it. If you have this in your being, you just play the music, it will come through and affect people. So like, share, and subscribe. The next video that I'm going to do, I think we're going to get into some of the technical details about the practices of shamanism, how exactly you work with energy, why these things work, and I'm going to try to make some correlations with science. Also, please support us on Patreon if you can. Thanks a lot.